Please turn to Lesson 7 in your books. The Wisdom Tradition in the Ancient Near East. With this one, I'm going to be spending more time developing some of the skills or helping with some of the skills that mean getting stuff out of the book, out of the text, however we want to put it, and being able to remember it and understand it. The sort of things that are in there that help you and some of the skills of using those sorts of things. So, first of all, make sure you've got some idea of the heading. The Wisdom Tradition in the Ancient Near East. That's places like Egypt and Mesopotamia. Then there's something there in small print. You know about small print. Things that are put in small print are often quite important when you're signing bills and signing things. So in small prints it says to describe the relationships between Hebrew wisdom and the wisdom writings of the region. First heading, Wisdom in Other Lands of the Ancient Near East. And then you've got a paragraph about wisdom. In there, one of the key words is the word recognised. So what this is about wisdom. It's not just in Israel, but it's recognised in the Old Testament. So in order to show how great Solomon's wisdom was, the writer said that Solomon was wiser than the wisdom writers of the East or the wisdom writers of Egypt. And you can look that up. It's in 1 Kings 4:30. Well, it's actually written out for you there. But this is all about recognising that the other wisdom things were known about in Egypt, or known about in Israel. And then goes on with dot points to set out who these wisdom writers are. Dot points are very useful actually. You can do things quick. 1, 1, 2, 2, 3. Arabians, Edomites, and also Babylonians. Then it goes on to talk about the sons of Mahul were Edomites. This is just expanding this out, talking about it. There's the summary. Here's the expansion. Their wisdom is referred to in Jeremiah 49:7 and Obadiah 8. Wisdom writers of Egypt are spoken of in Genesis 41, also in Isaiah 19:11-15. In Job 2:11, the names of Job's friends show that they were non-Israelite. Teman was in Edom, Shuan in Assyria, and though Naaman was in southwest Judah, Zophar was thought of as an Edomite because the clan that settled in Naaman was from Edom. This is all information about building out about the fact that the wisdom writers have been referred to in the Bible. So they are seen as the Bible writers as being important. The existence of this ancient Near East wisdom, which the Old Testament talks about, has been shown in recent years by the discovery of a number of Egyptian and Babylonian wisdom books. Key word here, discovery. Discovering a number of Egyptian Babylonian books. So we actually can see that. So what are we going to do with these wisdom books? Well, we're going to compare Hebrew and ancient Near Eastern books. The study of these wisdom books and a comparison between them and those of the Hebrews show that there existed from the Nile to the Tigris an extensive wisdom literature with, here's the key idea, and you can underline it or highlight it, same main characteristics. So they all had some things that were the same characteristics. This literature was common property of the peoples of the ancient Near East. It's interesting too to find that the wisdom writers of both Egypt and Babylonia belonged to the class of scribes. Please notice it says interesting. So this is building out our understanding. It's not necessarily hugely important, but it's always good to understand things better. Next paragraph goes on to something important. It goes on to the translation. Okay, I want you to please, with your highlighter or underliner, do that word, the translation. Okay. Translation of all these Egyptians and Babylonian wisdom books has made it possible for people to compare their contents to those of the Hebrews. So you can put them side by side and see what's the same. And the comparison raises some questions of interest and importance. Please go over questions of interest and importance. So one of the questions that comes up is, were the Hebrew wisdom writers indebted to those of other countries? Please go underline indebted. And you understand that they borrowed from other writers. And if they did, how much? Point A. The familiarity of the Hebrews with the wisdom of other countries is evident from the wisdom writers referred to above. So, if you like, that stuff that we did over in number 1 is they were familiar with it, they knew it. B. And I just go over the word familiarity. The key thing there is they were familiar with it, they knew about it. The older and higher culture of Egypt and Babylon would naturally impress the Hebrews. They were a very scholarly nation by this stage, Egypt and Babylon, and so the Israelites, which were still probably wanderers around, they were probably starting to settle, but there was a very long tradition in these other places. C. The fact that the wisdom literature of both Egypt and Babylonia was much older than that of the Hebrews, so it goes back further, suggests that the Hebrew wisdom writers were indebted to other sources for much of their wisdom thought. They borrowed it, pinched it, grabbed it, used it, because wisdom literature, wisdom is to be shared. It's not mine or yours, but wisdom is something for all of us. Right, number D. There are certain characteristics in the earlier books of Hebrew wisdom which are strikingly non-Israelite. They're not like other Israelite things, so please go over strikingly non-Israelite. Dot point 1. The cosmopolitan outlook that takes a worldwide view rather than concentrating on Israel itself. Cosmopolitan, just much wider, not just focusing on your nation, which Israel tends to do. Cosmopolitan, interesting word. You might look it up in your dictionary. Not now. Number 2, dot point. The comparatively cold, outwardly religious expression. It's sort of the gods out there, not the God close to us. God out there. And the gods were pretty mean and miserable, some of them, if you read anything about them. Right? I'd probably go over the word cold there. That helps you remember it. That's using emotions rather than structure. The rest of the ones I've been doing have been using the structures with the way it's built. Okay, the lack of mention of things which receive much emphasis in other parts of the Old Testament worship. In other words, the Jews talked about other things. And here's a list of them. No mention of sacrifices, which is big in Israel literature. The election of Israel, God's people, that's what that means, and little use of the name of God. The large number of books which contain similar thoughts and words show the later writers who borrowed from the earlier. That's how you know if someone's relying on someone earlier. They borrow things. They probably don't put it in brackets like we have to now or put marks around it. Right. So it's pretty clear, isn't it? Looking through there, it's fairly easy for you to go back and do assessment task 9, which asks why, important word why, not how or when, but why do we answer yes to this question? And if you look back there, there's a whole lot of things for you to write about. could talk about the characteristics. They're up there in 4D. We could talk about that, the fact that it was older in C. You could go back to A, the familiarity. They knew about it. And you could even do B, about them being impressed about it. So it's all up there for you to do. I'll give you a little bit of time to start on that. Just a little bit of time. Okay, away you go doing some writing. Okay, you'll be able to finish that off in your own time. Enjoy it. It's a good question, a very interesting question. And it's good that you're going back over because it helps you understand the importance of wisdom literature in the Bible, as well as the fact that there was wisdom literature elsewhere. Because it helps us understand why the wisdom books are like they are. Because they're rather different to other parts of the Bible, such as the prophets, or the gospel, or the letters, or Genesis, or the history books. Okay. So the next major question is, was there any borrowing from each other? Pick a word that you think is important in there. Okay. Did you pick borrowing? I thought you might have underlined or highlighted. There was borrowing on both sides. Right? So the Egyptians and so on borrowed from Israel, and Israel borrowed from Egypt or Mesopotamia. Close relationship between Israelites, Egyptians, and Babylonians. Hebrew wisdom had an effect on the more serious thinkers of other nationalities. What are you going to underline? I'd probably put serious thinkers, but you may not. They in their turn have handed this on to others who thought the same way they did. In this way, the Hebrew religious spirit would have spread to both Egypt and Babylon. Right? I wonder whether this is preparing for the spread of the gospel later. Maybe? It would have been used in wisdom writings of these countries. Both of these countries undoubtedly influenced Israel. And here we say, going backwards. Okay, turn over the page. Number 3. Oh, sorry. Does Hebrew wisdom literature differ from that of other nations? Keyword there, differ. First difference in the Hebrew wisdom is naturally enough. It's monotheism. Important word. Underline thing. It means emphasis on one God. Other wisdom literatures mention many gods and goddesses with a variety of names, Apollo, or Venus, or Diana, or, Thor, the god of thunder, all that sort of stuff. To B, there are moral teachings in the Egyptians and other non-Israelite books. The main difference, and this is important, is the reason people do things. Please go over the reason people do things. Hebrew wisdom writers insist on good behaviour because God is holy. Keyword or words, God is holy. His people must be holy in their walk of life. Again and again in the Hebrew wisdom writings, the motive pointed is not be good for good's sake, but for the benefit you get from doing the right thing. Keyword or actually phrase, benefit you get from doing the right thing. So if you do the right thing, things turn out for you. Point 2, the will of God is the real reason for right living. Will of God, real reason, key words. If a person does the will of God, he is truly wise. That idea is specifically Israelite, and there is nothing like it in other ancient wisdom books. Punishment for evil living takes place on this earth, according to the Hebrew wisdom writers. The next section there is not an assessment task, but I think it'd be good for you to do it anyway. But you can go back when the lesson finishes and think about why they insist on good behaviour. What's the reason why? Yeah, very interesting. We now come down to some of the wisdom writings to look at. The Egyptian concept of Maat could be considered an embodiment of wisdom. Named after the goddess Maat, this principle was founded upon the idea that there was order to the universe. Key ideas: order to the universe. And that truth and justice were part of this established order. That often happens in wisdom literature. I'd suggest it's probably true of Aboriginal wisdom literature. A passage in the instruction of Hahatemetep presents Ma as follows: Mass is good and its worth is lasting. It has not been disturbed since the day of its creator, whereas he who transgresses the ordinances are punished. It lies as a path in front of even him who knows nothing. Wrongdoing has never yet brought its venture to port. It is true that evil may gain wealth, but the strength of truth is that it lasts. A man can say, "It was the property of my father." So what you've got to do there is now go back to Proverbs 3, 1 to 10, and look and see what things are common between the two. Okay? I'm going to read the next one. You can go back and do that yourself. It's an assessment task, but it's comparing those things together. It's a very good thing to do. Right, next bit. Lying and slander are abhorrent. Really disliked, hated, whatever you like to call it, to Hebrew, Egyptian and Babylonian writers. Teaching of Amenhotep is Egyptian. Counsels of Wisdom is a Babylonian text. And here are some of the things that it says. He that hideth hatred is of lying lips. Right? Here's one from Proverbs. And he that utters a slander is a fool. Okay? And you've got to highlight now some of the points that are going to be the same. Right? Do not act as a witness to a false statement or remove another man by your tongue. Teaching Amenhotep. Do not libel. Tell lies, in fact. Speak what is of good report. Do not say evil things. Speak well of people. One who utters libel and speaks evil. Men shall waylay him with his debit account to Shamash. Okay? One who utters slander, who is guilty of backbiting, who spreads the vile rumours about his equal, who lays malign charges against his brother. Malign is evil, bad, really bad. Only a portion of the text is preserved. The lines quoted apparently belong to a list of evildoers. Hymn to Nethertha of verse. Lack of sincerity was frowned upon. Do not speak with a man insincerely. That is an abomination of God. Really, really bad. Do not separate your heart from your tongue. teaching of Amenhotep. Be with a friend and companion. Do not speak. Do not speak hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is where you know that you're saying something's wrong. You're a hypocrite. You're saying it, but you're not doing it. Utter what is decent. Counsels of wisdom. Do not conserve with a talebearer. Do not consult with an idler. In your own grace you'll become a mind for them. Then you will reduce your own output, forsake your path, and will let your wise circumspect mind be considered rebellious. Okay, so you go through and you're thinking about the things that are the same and highlighting them, similar points. Okay, thank you very much.